Near my high school, where gang violence was common, lockdowns were frequent. However, one event stands out in my memory that had nothing to do with that. The only time I truly felt fear wasn't due to a fugitive or shooting, but because of Jason, a student known for his troubled behavior. Despite being exceptionally smart, he struggled with authority, socializing, and was eventually expelled for bringing a knife and attempting to strangle a teacher. After returning from an intervention school, he seemed worse. Once, we found ourselves both in trouble in the front office, waiting for the assistant principal, who was preoccupied. In those minutes, Jason vividly described his experiences with troubled peers from the intervention school, pyromaniacs, drug dealers, even gang members, who influenced him negatively. It was clear he belonged there, yet he returned to our school. He spoke fondly of his time there, surprising me with tales of mischief. However, he casually mentioned being taught to make a bomb, a chilling moment interrupted by the assistant principal calling him in. That was our last interaction. Later, Jason made a bomb threat, leading to a school evacuation. Seeing his clear backpack, I feared the worst, but fortunately, it was a false alarm. The incident exposed flaws in the school's security, highlighting Jason's potential danger had the bombs been real. Despite his actions, Jason found humor in the chaos he caused, revealing his disturbing mindset. His eventual arrest and the discovery that the bombs were fake brought relief, but also a chilling realization of what could have been. In another incident involving a troubled classmate named Blake, tensions escalated after he was publicly humiliated by a teacher. Blake's troubling behavior, including threats and provocative online posts, culminated in a violent outburst at school. He shot a school resource officer before fleeing, triggering a lockdown. The fear was palpable as we hid, unsure of our fate. When Blake attempted to force his way into our classroom, he accidentally injured himself with his own weapon, ending the threat and sparing further harm. Reflecting on these events, I'm reminded of another frightening experience from my childhood, immigrating to the United States with my family. Arriving in New York City, we faced unexpected challenges due to a friend of my brother's, who turned out to be dangerous. Despite the ordeal, we eventually found safety thanks to the help of concerned neighbors and law enforcement. These events shaped my perspective on safety, trust, and resilience, influencing my decision to pursue a career in law enforcement. I'm a girl, and I used to live in a small city with a significant political importance, so it always had an airport. One day, my aunt was flying in from another town where she had been living for years, and we were eagerly waiting to welcome her at the airport. We headed towards the gate where people came out after picking up their luggage. It had sliding glass doors through which you could see people inside getting their luggage. I remember being very talkative while waiting. At one point, my grandma gripped my hand tightly and shot me a look that clearly said, "Be quiet." Initially, I thought I had said something wrong, but soon I realized she was trying to eavesdrop on the people standing next to us. They seemed to be arguing intensely. My grandma, always inclined towards gossip, glanced over at them. It was an elderly man and a heavily pregnant woman. They were engaged in a discussion that didn't interest my 7-year-old self, so I ignored it. From there, my memory starts to blur. What I remember is the elderly man shouting repeatedly, "There he is, I'm going to get him," until a man emerged from the sliding glass doors. Suddenly, screams erupted all around, and my grandma threw me to the ground, shielding me with her body. There were noises like fireworks, screams, and a strange, suffocating smell. I felt overwhelmed both by my grandma's weight and the heat under her. I was feeling really uncomfortable and started screaming. At one point, I tried to push her off me and saw a lot of red close to my face, both on the ground and people lying with hands on their heads. Everything smelled awful and hot. I can't find other words to describe it. My grandma forcefully pushed my head down and whispered urgently, "Stop and play dead now." It was the most serious I'd ever heard her. Until then, I didn't understand what was happening, and I was upset with my grandma for being so forceful. But her words made me realize the seriousness of the situation, and I quietened down immediately, trying hard not to cry. After a while, my grandma got off me and practically carried me to safety behind a large pillar. My legs felt shaky, like I had no strength left. police officer assured me everything would be all right. There were other scared people around us, and we sat in silence for a while, listening to police and the old man crying loudly. Eventually, it grew quiet. I was taken to a room where I had to tell the police what I knew for some time before we were allowed to leave. On the way there, an officer covered my eyes with his hand, which made me angry and tired of being treated like that. I tried to remove his hand and caught a glimpse of the pregnant woman lying on her back, a sight etched in my memory since that day. Later, my grandma told me more details. She explained that a few years ago, a very bad man did bad things. At the time the incident happened, she simply told me the man was the woman's father, and she was very young when she got pregnant by a man who then abandoned her. He was returning because she had contacted him, considering allowing him to be a father. When her father found out, he was furious and sought revenge for his daughter's suffering. My grandma learned this from the news later, but at the airport, she overheard the father talking about how the man had ruined his daughter's life and how he wouldn't let anyone mistreat her. When the man emerged from the glass doors with his luggage, he pulled out a gun, causing people to scream and my grandma to push me to the ground. However, he didn't just kill that man, he was too emotional or inexperienced with guns, injuring others with stray bullets. During the chaos, the woman kept screaming that she loved her child's father. When her father finally aimed correctly, she threw herself in the way, resulting in both the man and the baby dying instantly. The police arrived soon after, and the old man was subdued. It took them a while because it was a small airport with low crime rates. My grandma said the whole ordeal lasted about 20 minutes, but it felt like an eternity to me. It wasn't until recently, when I spoke to my grandma again, that I realized how close we had been to the old man and his daughter. Seeing the red so close to my face that day, I inadvertently put myself in danger by trying to push my grandma away. I'm forever grateful for her protection and that I didn't fully understand the danger until later. As for me, I'm now 22 years old, but this happened when I was 10. At the time, I had a cell phone because my parents traveled for work, leaving me with my grandparents. While my dad worked in Austin, my mom stayed home with me. During a school break, we decided to fly down to Austin to visit him. My mom, a smoker, didn't want me in the airport smoking room, which was essentially a glass box filled with smoke. We left our gate and headed in that direction, but fortunately, there was a bookstore about 10 feet from the smoking room. My mom sent me to browse while she stayed near the smoking room's entrance, keeping an eye on me. Before parting ways, my mom told me to text her saying, "I really want this book," if I felt uncomfortable around anyone. Being an avid reader, I perused the aisles. After about 5 minutes, I noticed a man entering the bookstore. I mostly remember his gray suit and black shoes. I saw his shoes approach the thriller section where I was browsing, so I moved to another section. He followed me, but I assumed it was a coincidence since I was still looking at mature books. I moved again, this time to a section with books on racks in the middle of the floor rather than on shelves. Yet again, the man moved to the same rack on the opposite side. My creep radar was going off, which rarely failed me. To test my theory further, I walked over to the children's section with books like The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Sure enough, the man followed me there. Now, I was freaking out, so I returned to the thriller section, closest to the checkout desk, grabbed a random book, and texted my mom, "I really want this book." Within seconds, I smelled my mom's perfume and heard her say, "Oh good, you found something." We promptly paid and left the store. Once we were away from the bookstore, I told my mom what had happened. She had seen the man following me across the store twice and had hurried over because her own instincts were on high alert. We stopped at the restroom before heading back to our gate. While there, I noticed the man from the bookstore walking down the hall. I silently pointed him out to my mom, who went on high alert again. Back at our gate, my mom informed the woman managing boarding about the situation since Nashville. The woman called security, and 2 large guards arrived quickly. My mom loudly pointed out the man, explaining how he had been following us since we arrived in Nashville and making us uncomfortable. After hearing the full story and my mom's accusations, the bookstore guy ran off. Security called for backup, and about 2 minutes later, he boarded our plane to Austin without the creepy guy. I live in Oklahoma, right in the heart of Tornado Alley, where extreme weather drills have been a regular part of school life for decades, long before the addition of other emergency drills. When I was in middle school back in the 90s, I distinctly remember huddling on the floor in the interior hallways of my school, every month or so, with the lights off and my butt sticking up in the air. As a girl, it always felt awkward, like I was exposing myself to all the teachers passing by. But no matter how uncomfortable it was, I had to follow instructions. I dreaded the extreme weather lockdowns more than the thought of an actual tornado. Tornadoes were rare, but these drills happened more frequently, especially during certain times of the year. One day in May during my 7th grade year, a real storm hit. At that time, my classroom was one of those temporary buildings they set up around the school to handle overcrowding. Everyone called them portables, but they weren't portable at all, just flimsy structures. As the winds howled louder and the tornado sirens wailed, the usual chatter ceased, replaced by a palpable sense of dread. Initially, there was an eerie excitement mixed with it. I was almost looking forward to experiencing a real storm, as long as my home wasn't destroyed. There was a part of me that hoped a tornado would hit, just to make those monthly drills seem worthwhile. But that hope faded quickly. Inside the portable, the lights were already off, and it was getting darker outside as the storm blocked out the sun unnaturally quickly. The winds grew stronger, shaking the doors as if the storm itself was trying to break in. Then came the hail, pounding against the door like a volley of meteors. The once quiet hallway filled with a cacophony of noise, and fear gripped everyone. The teachers tried to reassure us, but their voices betrayed their own fear. The walls shook, and finally they too took cover. For a few minutes, we were all equalized in this uncomfortable position, meant to keep us safe. Nobody was worried about someone seeing their rear end. We all had bigger concerns. The air vibrated with the frequency of an approaching tornado. I could feel it in my chest. Outside, I heard chaos, destruction, debris slamming into things and then flying away. Then came the most terrifying moment.